Well, we're still working with families in the classroom and at home. And this is, I think I mentioned last week, the last three chapters all have to do with primarily the same subject, coming at it from a slightly different angle. And so I've tried to enrich this material, which is going to get very repetitive in terms of both reading and lectures, with some videos that should help a bit. There, as I said, there's just kind of slight differences in approach between these last three chapters. So this one is chapter 8, welcoming and supporting families. And, from my perspective and all, I was so glad to see that the text emphasized this. The most important thing for families in an early childhood education environment is that they feel comfortable and that they feel they belong. Now, they're not going to feel that way immediately when they walk in, or the first week or the first day or whatever, but that's when you can get the most what am I trying to say, positive kind of interactive relationship with a parent and a family, is when they feel comfortable. It's true for all of us, isn't it? When we feel comfortable and that we belong, then we can relax a little bit, let the guard down. Now, I add a potential language or culture barrier to that, and you can see why that's so important. So it's really important to create welcoming spaces. And this has a lot of programmatic points that here to greet families at the door and have a family room. That's a great idea, where family members can get together. Hopefully they can make some friends with each other and share their experiences. And it also, separate from the family room and the classroom, there should be a private space where families and staff can have private conversations if they need to, and that will come up, at some point. And to be sure that dual language families can actually understand what you're saying, and that may involve a translator. It goes such a long way to just learn a few words of their language. Mispronounced, whatever, embarrassed trying to say it. That it means a lot to people when you reach out that way as well. Another thing about creating welcoming spaces, this is a big issue for me, and it was one of my most fun things in Head Start to do, or my kids' rooms, and that is making a beautiful space. And one I want to caution too against a lot of chaos and too much mishmash and too much stuff on the walls, but to make that's part of welcoming. Our environment creates how we feel. Are we calm or agitated? We know that about colors, right? And so that's something to really think about. How how the environment, if it makes you feel chaotic, it probably makes families feel chaotic as well. It's one of the things I've noticed over the years in classrooms, and I've seen a lot of research on it. Just that the intensity of primary colors and stuff. Public school classrooms are this way a lot in the primary grades. Stuff pasted up all over, and there's just too much, particularly for kids who have learning disorders and a variety of other things. I had a friend. Actually, she's a professional, and she does workshops on, kids with fetal alcohol syndrome and fetal alcohol effect, and autism and ADD and ADHD. And she had a daughter who had some of those issues. And when she went to public school, she had to go to the teacher and say, "Look, you need to make a quiet space somewhere with some pillows and some place where kids can go and retreat from." She didn't attack the teacher and say, from the chaos of your walls in your classroom, but that's kind of what she meant. Some place that someone can go and be quiet. So think about that as well in terms of welcoming spaces. Same in the family space that they're just suggesting you make here, the program, creating a space for families. It's the same thing in an adult environment. So the other aspect here that they're referring to, the program should regularly provide the family with information about the child's learning, development, and well-being. And the key here is that you want the parents to feel like they're partners in this with you. You're not just the expert telling them how it is, but there's a partnership because the kids are at home a lot more than they're with you. And so if you can create that feeling of uh, real partnership, not just lip service to partnership, but true partnership, that's a reach for some of us due to our background or education or, maybe resistance to the culture of the family comes from, whatever. But that's what's going to be most successful, is if it's coming from a genuine place. So that involves sharing educational ideas and information that you may know about the staff, to share that with parents, but also ask the share. That's part of being a partner, is asking the parents what they think might work or what they're doing. And so you keep that ongoing communication between home and school, alive. And the other thing that's really important with dual language learners is that you encourage the family to reinforce the concepts that the kids are learning in school in their home and in their home language, so that they're getting it at school in English, where they may or may not fully understand or comprehend those things deeply and completely, or the way an English speaker would. And so if they're reinforced at home, which means you have to talk to the parent about what that is that you're doing in the home language, then that is really helpful to the kids. And it turns out that when that happens, when that's done, that the children show improved cognitive and social development, especially in reading and literacy skills, when they're learning, being told at home or being reinforced at home in their home language what it is you're doing in the classroom. Okay. So what about information about learning? Well, what programs can do is they can hold workshops for the families, and the families can help design and implement what's being done in the classroom. And do you see how much more likely they'd be willing to reinforce that at home with what we were just talking about with the home language, if they were involved in creating and designing those programs? And then also to provide all resources for the families to use at home with different kinds of media. And there's just such a wide variety of media now. I encourage you to think about media that isn't always computer based. We know about access, technological access, right? Plus, it's good to look at books and watch film and do other things, So listen to music, whatever it may be. And so that's important. And also that it be in the home language when possible. That's for programs. Teachers here in this providing information about learning to families can inform parents on a regular basis about why they're doing what they're doing. What are the purposes and the benefits of the activities? And because some of them may just seem kind of silly. I think I mentioned this once before to you, that I used to talk to parents about reading to infants, and they just thought I was nuts. Why would you read to an infant who can't understand anything that you're saying? Well, because as we know, and I know you know, there are all kinds of benefits to be gained from reading to infants, because they're sitting on your lap. They are all warm and cozy, cozy, what I was trying to say. It's got that nice emotional connection, but then they're looking at pictures, right? They're hearing language, and that's the key point. They're hearing language. And it also develops not only can develop a love of language, but a love of books as well. They're physical. You're turning the pages. Or if it's a new book, you don't know what the next illustration is going to be. It's fun, and it's bonding, and it's a great thing to do with kids. But for many people, it just, if you can't read, why, if you can't talk, why would you read? And that's what this section means to me about why you would inform parents on a regular basis about the purposes and the benefits of the activities that you're using in school and that you're recommending them to do at home. And also to provide information regularly with dual language learner families, the benefits of using both languages. We talked about that previously. And promoting bilingualism. It is such a shame to lose a language. We are the least, in America, among the least language proficient in other languages of any other countries. Now, in Europe, that makes sense. You're cheek by jowl. We're very isolated here on this huge, continent. So it's hard for us to do that. But, it's very common for Europeans to speak at least two, if not more languages. So the more languages you can speak, the better off you are in this world, particularly in an increasingly globalizing world. So that's what you want to do. You encourage the family to promote bilingualism. Don't lose their home language. Learn English, especially the kids, but so many of the kids wind up losing their home language. So what are the programs that support for advocacy, that create strong, so the programs become strong advocates for families? Because effective programs are those programs that provide support to families if they want it. You cannot impose it on people, but if they want it, in connecting them with community resources through referrals, you might go with them. I can't tell you how many times I went to food stamp offices or welfare. It's not called welfare anymore, but anyway, aid to families with dependent children offices with parents. Because they needed that kind of support. Now, you don't need to, that's not what they're suggesting you do. I'm just saying that's one kind of support that you could give. So this strengthening families model that they're talking about in this chapter, the 5 protective factors for strengthening families. The first is parental resilience. The second is social connections, not being isolated. And we'll go through these a little bit more. The third is concrete support in times of need. You can empathize, you can sympathize, that's important. But if there's anything real you can do to actually get them some help or help them in their search for help, then that's really important to do. And then 4, knowledge of parenting and child development for parents is really powerful. And social and emotional consequences, competence, which kind of goes along with number 2, which is social connections. The research shows that having these factors, parental resilience, social connections, concrete support in times of need, knowledge of parenting and child development, and social and emotional competence, research shows that these factors diminish the likelihood of child abuse and neglect. So anything you can do to support any one or all of those 5 protective factors in a family are also protecting the child. And it builds family strengths and an environment that really promotes optimal child development. So we're moving on now to family functioning, and look at programs first from a programmatic level. The collaboration with staff and families to develop policies and procedures. That's an important one. Head Start's very, very good at that. It's mandated by Head Start. Respond to questions and concerns from the staff, from other fellow staff, and act as a professional resource. And then also the program can provide professional development for the staff in areas that they're really interested in learning more about. That used to be something that we always once a year talked about as staff. Well, would you like more, training in or support in learning about? And people had different interests that were all related, to working in the field. And so when possible, those training opportunities were provided to staff, and some of them were really important and powerful and changed lives for the staff, which in turn changed lives for their kids and the families. So another thing that I think we're teachers now. Yeah, teachers. One of the important things from a teaching perspective is to understand that families function in a variety of ways, and that children that you're working with and you see in the classroom may need support outside of the program, of your program, that there may need to be other supports. So you also need to be aware of and have an understanding of risk, stress, and resiliency factors, so that, can affect family functioning. That's something that's pretty obvious, I think. At least that was my experience. When families are resilient, that's fairly apparent. When there are risk and stress factors, that may not be so apparent as specifically what they are, but it's obvious that there are some usually if that's happening. You want to communicate daily with the family about the child's well-being, just a check-in for them, for the family, about how you see the child doing. And then if there are signs of stress or risk with the children that your colleagues are observing, be in a cooperative relationship with the colleagues in terms of responding. Maybe colleagues together want to speak to the family. So now community partnerships, these are really very important. And once again, this is something that Head Start really excels at, or, certainly when I was with the program, it did. I'm sure it still does. So from a programmatic standpoint, if you're in that aspect of the whole thing, you want to be sure that the program itself establishes good relationships with its community partners, and so that you have continuity in taking care of the families and the child's needs in the community. From a teacher's perspective, you need to understand how important those community resources are and to use them when you need to, partnerships. And to do that, you sometimes need to be the go-between, as I think I said earlier, with the parent and the community resources. So it's important to be aware of these things. If you don't know about what's out there, your parents usually don't, or they're nervous about going or afraid to go or find out. So how do you, this is, here you go. How do you connect the families up? So from a program perspective, the program can support the staff in that referral process. You can coordinate with community resources to conduct outreach and provide services. The programmatically, you could have in that parent room, you could have someone from different community resources come in and at a parent meeting and explain what it is that they do and what they provide and how to access that type of thing. Another key thing is to be able, as a program, to anticipate the family's needs for support based on the knowledge and circumstances of events that are going on. And those can be familial, individual family events. They can be larger societal events, like right now with COVID, for instance. There are family needs that are much greater, that are generalized among certain populations, for instance, that you can anticipate that there, people may need help in certain areas. And so for teachers, once again, a lot of this is the same, to be familiar with the resources and be sure and respond to any parents' requests about information And you may have to do a little hand holding here to be sure that they actually follow through and that type of thing. Not because they're not capable, but because there's often fear involved in connecting community resources. So that you can help them gain access to those. And, at this, while you're doing that, you have to keep in mind that there may be very diverse cultural experiences of families. There may be language difficulties, so there might be a lot of support required in actually interacting with community services. You also need to be aware and conscious of signs that children or family might need outside support. You might have to initiate further inquiry if you're seeing some signs that you think are troubling about either what's going on with the kid or the family. And then the use of community resources. So for teachers, it's just gaining knowledge really is important. What's going to enhance your personal professional expertise and might enhance children's learning experiences. And with the internet now, it doesn't even have to be necessarily exclusively a close community. There are ways to do things, in a broader range of experiences. So programs and teachers engage families in supporting continued development and maintenance of their home language. This is really, really important. You need, as a teacher, to be able to communicate to families that it's critical for the families that have dual language learners, the importance of speaking to children in the home language. So, and a key component of that is that families should use as many opportunities as possible to engage children in conversation. I underlined that. This is another thing I found working with families when I was working with Head Start years ago, is that they often felt that many families didn't really converse with their children that much, have actual conversations with them. There were orders that were given or a response sometimes to a request from, I'm hungry, mommy, whatever. Those are not conversations. So what conversations, as you know, they're a two-way exchange about something. But parents often didn't understand the importance of doing that with young children. Once again, they felt that they were too young and wouldn't understand. But kids love that exchange and also that attention. Excuse me, and it certainly develops language skills and listening skills as well. Okay, so that engaging children in conversation is an important thing, particularly with dual language learners. And so for the home language, in the programmatically, when you're working with families with dual language learners, you've got to find innovative and interesting ways to get them to participate. And I mean, it's not rocket science, but come to school and talk about the families, about their culture and about their language. Teach, my gosh, kids that's when you learn languages. You're at your peak, preschool, and those early years up to about 8. And so the kids in the program could be learning words from the parents of dual language families. And then there's objects that can go with the words or drawings. There's all kinds of ways to do that, to include that. And then you can do it. You can model a one-on-one group. You can model more unstructured peer activities. But get those families to help and colleagues to help design a program to do that. And so for teachers, you offer a variety of developmentally appropriate, individually meaningful, and culturally responsive ways for those young dual language learners to feel comfortable using both languages. Let's see if there's anything else that's important. Okay, this is a key point, and this wraps this chapter up. To understand and respect the fact that often, most often actually, the early education setting is the first place that a dual language learner actually encounters English. You know, can you imagine going to school at any level in another country where you don't speak the language and you just have to sit there and listen to, gobbledygook coming into your ears? You have no idea what's going on. That's what it's like for young children walking into a setting like that. And so it's just really important to keep that in mind, that this is often their first experience with English, and that it's important to honor the home language. And if you do that, if you're able to walk that path, which can be tricky, then you can really foster positive social emotional development and learning in all areas, language and all other areas. So that is this week, and I will see you next week.